simple scoring system. You'll see that you score each question 0 to 5. Then there's a summary of adding up those scores. There's three. For the summative assessment, we've added 3 questions now for each question for each section, and then so there's a total of 15 possible points for each section. You will indicate. Now you should be taking a minute to find the summary for this. There's a summary sheet, a scoring sheet, but you will look at one domain at a time. I'm sorry, yeah, they're each is listed one domain at a time. So we're gonna that's after so you should have now reviewed the different domains from the assessment here. And now moving towards the summary sheet is the handout. Where you put the scores. You list the tools that you used to answer these questions. Was it through observation? Was it through portfolios or instructional data? Then you'll sit there and you need to work with somebody on your team that knows the student as well. You'll see that's at least one other person. And this helps define who a student is in their level. So it's not. You can have students who have zeros because they have a significant cognitive impairment that doesn't allow them to respond, speaking, or maybe even listening at times, or many of our kids who struggle with any reading or writing. But that does not mean that they'll be an English learner forever. We can have students who are considered English proficient because their English compares to a student with the same or similar disability who is English proficient, who may be an English only kid. And so when it's not the lack of exposure to English and it is just the disability, then we can call a student well developed in that area. I know it's a difficult language sometimes to use with our families, or when we say someone has well-developed English when we know they have a significant disability, but we're talking about comparing them to English only. So well-developed compared to an English proficient student with a similar disability would be the complete way to say that in order to have everybody understand what we're talking about. So that lack of exposure to English really doesn't have any meaningful impact on their proficiency anymore in those different domains, that it's truly due to their disability. So in that summary sheet, you can determine that a student has a level of 4, that well-developed, even with raw scores of 0, if it is truly their disability that's completely impacting them. But in order to make that determination, you don't have to use just the test items that you found on there. You can use other evidence. Go back and think about what was the home language like? What was the survey like? Was there just that the student was exposed to some Spanish earlier? What's the primary language information like? What are the different perspectives that you have from families and from previous teachers? So there's definitely other ways to interpret this data. But you'll find that very importantly on the scoring sheet that it has those different scoring criteria in order to determine the appropriate level for students. So if you have a newcomer that's coming from another country that has limited exposure to English, they're not going to be given a level 4. Even if they do have a significant impairment, it would be hard to say that it's completely due to their disability when we know that they've also had limited exposure to English. Well, I hope that helps you get through your administration. I think you'll find it as a performance-based assessment that relies on lots of available data that you already have and being very adaptable. I think we're lucky to be able to use this ELAA now during our distance learning and while students aren't with us as much as they were used to them being with us, because it is a very adaptable assessment for these times. If you have more questions, well, let's move to one more thing for the process is that when you're completing this and work with your English learner coordinator on this, that the EL summary score sheet gets sent to Claire. And you also can find that there's other TOMS types of requirements as well, and look for that. Again, work with your English learner coordinator if when you're setting in the support. So students then receive EL supports and services as required based on the scores. We talked about this helps define who they are as English learners. It helps you define what a culturally appropriate or linguistically appropriate goal is for our students. But there are students that will come out with a well-developed score, and so that would be an appropriate student for considering our reclassification process. So the level 4 well-developed looks a lot like our definition for an alternative reclassification process for kids with disabilities. So make sure you understand that process as well. And then after you've completed that, uh, uh, after you've completed that assessment, um, you can then use that alternative reclassification process. So they do go hand in hand. Another powerful thing about this assessment is you have this, once you determine the score, you have the score. We're not waiting for results to come back. Well, if you need more support or services, support from about this, here's a group of ELAA resource teachers and us in special education that have been supporting this for a while. My name is Tim Tipton. I'm a speech language pathologist. If you and been working on English learners with disabilities for a while, coordinating the BSN for bilingual assessments. If you have questions there, you have my email as well. See those Safe School links. We're going to make sure that you get a link to the Google folder with all the EL forms and additional documents that are still being produced to support this even further. And wish you the best of luck for this school year.